What's up, my beautiful people? We are back once again to some more Malicious Compliance. So let's get into stories and I'll see you in a bit. Challenge accepted. Never doubt the stubbornness of an obsessive compulsive deli worker. Someone recommended this one might fit better here. Not sure, but thought you might enjoy it anyway. This one is probably a lot more mild compared to other situations, but I thought the whole thing was kinda ironic, so I thought I would say. It happened a few years ago when I was working at a grocery store deli. The main part of our job was to use a slicer to cut cold meats and cheeses for customers. One day, an older gentleman walked up to the counter and you could just see the bad day he was having on his face. It looked like someone had kicked his puppy before peeing on his lawn. You know the kind. Anyway, he walks up and asks in a really disgruntled voice, "I need exactly 0.66 pounds of such and such, forgot what kind, cheese in a solid block. And yes, I know you can't get it the exact weight. I don't care, just get it done." Now, normally I try to be as polite as possible. One thing you're never short on at a deli is rude customers. But something about this guy's attitude kind of twisted something in me the wrong way. And I thought to myself, you know what? Challenge accepted. Now, if you've never worked at a deli before, something that might not really have crossed your mind before is not all cheese weighs the same. Some are pretty light, others are dense and heavy. Normally, this isn't a big problem since you weigh as you cut and can adjust the thickness of the slice as needed. When it's a solid chunk though, things become a little harder. More so if you have some angry dude waiting on you who looks like he'll tell you to recut the chunk if it's 0.01 pound off. And if they do that, you're stuck with a 0.65 to 0.67 chunk of cheese that you're probably not going to be able to sell, and have to either cut it up and mark it down or throw it out. So me, being the mildly OCD Asperger kid working at the deli for the past 5 hours, going into full engineer mode, weighing out the total weight and the length of the chub, the term for the large block of cheese or meat that is cut into smaller slices, doing out the quick calculations on a piece of spare paper, and measuring out the exact size needed to get the weight required before using a knife to chop off a chunk from the end. The mechanical slicers were not big enough in order to fully cut it, but the total work only took about 45 seconds. I've always been good at math. I put the cheese on the scale, it blinks for a moment as it's weighing, and pops up with a beautiful 0.66 pound on the dot. The older gentleman just looks down at the scale with a frown and squints his eyes, huffs like he's disappointed, then grabs his cheese and walks away. Though as he was walking away, I couldn't help see a slight smile/smirk on his face and hear him murmur, "Good job." Overall, I was pretty proud of the work. I still remember that moment years later, even if I couldn't tell you any of the other hundreds of people I'd served. You don't help me, I won't help you. So I requested July 3rd off and to close on July 4th. I wanted to go to Red, White, and Boom, which is about 1.5 hours away from me. I'd spend the night with my friend on the 3rd and be back home early on the 4th to make it to a closing shift. I put this request in about a month ago, probably mid to late May. My manager didn't give me those days off. She gave Sarah the 3rd and 4th off and gave me June 30th and July 1st off. I asked if she could switch Sarah and me since Sarah didn't request the days off and I had requested them off. My manager said, "No, you always get every request off you have. You're not getting this one." I had one request off in the middle of May that she had plenty of notice before to be able to give me off. I'm angry, but what can I do? Nothing. Well, my other coworker, Riley, had a health scare today where she was pooping blood. She needed to go to the hospital. My manager was furious that Riley had to leave work early. Again, crapping blood. Well, the doctor took Riley out of work until July 2nd. So my manager has no one to work those days. I'm off, Sarah already works, and Riley is out. What does my manager do? Ask me to work. What do I say? I'll do it. If I have the 3rd and 4th off, sweet justice. Neighbor made me eat a raisin cookie. She won the battle. but I won the war. The beans story reminded me of something that happened when I was a little kid. A little background. My dad thought it was funny to tell me stories about food, knowing that I, like all young children, would completely believe him. Some of the stories were just funny, like broccoli were actually little baby trees, and cauliflower was broccoli that had seen a ghost and got scared. Others were gross and caused me to avoid those foods for quite a while, like telling me that anything red had blood in it. Took me years to try strawberries again, and that raisins were dried up, dead baby fingers. I honestly don't know if his story is why I hate raisins, or if that I've always hated them, but even to this day, if I taste anything with a raisin in it, I will spit it right out. More background. I can make myself throw up really easily, like on cue. So, because our kindergarten got out an hour or so before my parents came home from work, I had to go to a neighbor's house after school and wait. This neighbor wasn't very nice to me, or to the other two kids she was watching, but I think she agreed to watch us because she was home with her daughter anyways, and wanted the little extra money. Well, one day she made cookies and offered us some. I was the oldest child in the group, so while all the other kids immediately grabbed the cookies and started eating them, I asked her if they were chocolate chip cookies, knowing that if they were oatmeal raisin, I'd skip it. Instead of answering me, she put a cookie on a napkin and passed it over. I looked at the cookie very carefully and said, "If this has raisins in it, no thank you. I don't eat raisins." She glared at me and told me that since I had already touched it, I had to eat it. I said that if I ate it, I would get sick. At this point, the other kids realized that the cookies they had been happily munching on were not chocolate chip. So one by one, they started putting their cookies down. The neighbors started yelling at me for being a bad influence, which in that moment was true, but also not my fault that younger kids automatically copy the older kids, and that I had better eat the cookie or else she was going to spank me and then put me in timeout until my parents got there. Well, I was so pissed, so I decided to throw up on her. I ate the entire cookie, basically swallowing chunks of it whole so I wouldn't have to touch the raisins any more than absolutely necessary, and washed it down with a glass of milk. The whole time she was watching me with this sick smile of victory on her face. Right as I finish the last bite, she stands up and goes, "There, was that so hard?" I chose that exact minute to projectile vomit all over the table, her shirt, and her shoes. I actually vomited a few times because while I can start at will, stopping isn't really in my control until I'm done. Well, of course, she was screaming. The other kids were crying, and I was feeling much better about things. I went to the bathroom, mainly to rinse my mouth out, but also to avoid having to clean up the mess. Thankfully, they had some books and bath toys in there, so I just read and played by myself quietly until my parents came to get me. According to my mom, neighbor was absolutely livid and was telling my mom what had happened, and my mom cut her off and said, "Well, why would you make her eat something she told you would make her sick?" Neighbor made some comment about how parents should be in charge of what kids eat, and my mom just laughed, shook her head, and said, "Get used to cleaning up messes then." She knew that I was a notoriously good eater, with only a handful of exceptions, due to my dad's creative parenting style. She took me home, and while I didn't get into trouble, she told me that she knew I had probably done it on purpose, and in the future I should find a better way to solve things. False. That is by far the best way to solve your problems. Don't ever change. Finally get to post here. Towing trailers. I work for a landscaping company that is pretty cheap. Like, we clean out abandoned buildings, and if we find tools, that's our shop tools. I don't think they've bought anything new. Nice new trucks, but never inspected or services, being the oil changes we do personally. Since I've started there, I've had the same Chevy 2500 diesel. I've put some mods in it, because I have to tow a 13,000-pound machine on a 3,100-pound trailer. The truck can, but doesn't overheat anymore. I've been pestering since day one that the truck doesn't have commercial registration, and that it's only registered to tow 5,125 pounds. So I'm a little overweight all the time. For about a year now, I haven't had adequate tie downs either, and complained almost daily about that, even to the point of signing an agreement that if I get pulled over, they're paying all the tickets. Today, as I'm heading out to our not so legal dumping ground, I get pulled over by DOT for one of my turn signals on the trailer being burnt out. He asked me to step out and do a walk around with him. I helped point out a few things he missed and thanked him for his service. Worked out to a total of $11,800. Commercial fines are much larger, for what would have cost him maybe $30 a month extra registration and $160 a year for trailer inspection. Alrighty guys, that's gonna wrap it up for today. Like usual, you know the drill. If you liked the video, consider subscribing. And if you really liked it, maybe give it a thumbs up and a share. Anyways, I will see you in the next one. Peace out.